So Abu Ja'far Al-Tahawi said, وَمَنْ وَصَفَ اللَّهَ بِمَعْنًى مِنْ مَعَانِي الْبَشَرِ فَقَدْ كَفَرَ. Whoever describes Allah with a meaning among the meanings of the humans has blasphemed. Here, ma'na means sifa. وَمَنْ وَصَفَ اللَّهَ بِمَعْنًى مِنْ مَعَانِي الْبَشَرِ أي بِصِفَةٍ مِنْ صِفَاتِ الْبَشَرِ. And the scholars, they call the attribute a meaning sometimes. Sometimes they mean the concept of the attribute of, for example, the concept of knowledge, the concept of power, the concept of will, the meaning. And sometimes they mean what's binding, what's inherent. If you said Allah sits, if someone said Allah sits, then it means he has a body. So that's the meaning. The meaning, saying Allah sits, attributes to Allah the meaning of humans, which is being a body. وَهُوَ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْقَرْنِ الثَّالِثِ, and he is from the people of the 3rd century. فَهُوَ دَاخِلٌ فِي حَدِيثِ خَيْرُ الْقُرُونِ قَرْنِي ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. He is included in the hadith. The best of the people are from my century, then those who come after them, then those who come after them, or those who follow them. Rawahu Tirmidhi. At-Tirmidhi narrated that hadith. وَالْقَرْنُ الْمُرَادُ بِهِ مِئَةُ سَنَةٍ. And the qarn that's mentioned in the hadith, what's intended by it is 100 years. Meaning a century. كما قال ذلك الحافظ أبو القاسم ابن عساكر في كتابه تبيين كذب المفتري, as said by Hafiz Abu al-Qasim ibn Asakir in his book تبيين كذب المفتري, exposing the lie of the fabricator, or something to that effect is the meaning of the title. الذي ألفه في التنويه بأبي الحسن الأشعري رضي الله عنه. That book which he authored in defending Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari radiyallahu anhu, defending his honor from the lies and fabrications that were said against him. Ash-SharH, the explanation. هذا الحديث معناه من حيث الإجمال وليس معناه كل من كان من أهل القرون الثلاثة الأولى هو خير ممن جاء بعده. The explanation. This hadith, its meaning is in general. It does not mean that everyone who existed or everyone who was among the people of the first 3 centuries is better than whoever came afterwards or after him. بل كان في من جاء بعد ذلك من هو خير من بعض من كان فيها. Rather, there was amongst those who came after that who is better than some of who was during that time. أي من بعض الأفراد لأن الصحابة لم يكونوا كلهم أولياء, meaning better than some individuals, because the companions, not all of them were saints. فالفضل عند الله بالتقوى ليس بالنسب ونحو ذلك. And so the merit to Allah is by taqwa, not by lineage and the likes of that. Meaning, there are some things that people that might grant someone a special status, special merit, let's say. Let me use the word merit. There's some things that might grant someone a special merit. Though, we're juggling words here. One might say merit, status, same difference. I'm just going to use the word merit here. Some things might give someone special merit, but the status, the rank, is by taqwa. The rank to Allah of the slave is by taqwa. What are some of the things that give a person a certain merit? Or a certain position if you want. Or even a certain status if you want, a sub-status. Like suhbah, companionship, being a companion. Well, that's a nice merit. That's a special merit. Does that mean you're better than everyone? No, not by itself. Also, being a tabi'i, that's a special merit. Being a scholar, that's a special merit. Being a parent over the child, that's a special merit compared to the child. Being the husband compared to the wife, that's a special merit. So people might have some positions or some merits. So does it mean then that the parent is better than the child because of being a parent? That the husband is better than the wife because of being the husband? Or that the scholar is better than the layman because of being a scholar? No, it does not mean that. Because scholarship is not a synonym for piety. And companionship is not a synonym for piety. And parenthood and being a husband, all of that is not a synonym for piety. Allah Ta'ala, قال Allah Ta'ala, Allah the Exalted said, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Certainly the best of you to Allah is the most God-fearing, who has most taqwa, who has the most bewaring of God, being afraid of God, or being on alert, just being literal here. Al-ittiqa is bewaring and being on alert. So you might have ittiqa from a sin. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, ittaqur riya. Have taqwa from insincerity. Here means beware. Ittaqur riya. Beware of insincerity. Who's most pious to Allah, who's better, who's noblest, akramakum, who has the most karam or karama to Allah is atqakum, not husband or scholar or companion, but most God-fearing. That's what our Shaykh taught us. That's what some people ignore. So, but then they're going to come into wrong judgments. So, I say that not to speak badly against a companion, but Shaykh didn't say since he was a companion, then he's exonerated and he's automatically a pious saint. And that's not like that, how our Shaykh taught us. Shaykh Abdullah also, he said, as it reached me, that Ash-Shafi'i was more knowledgeable than Aisha. Someone might hear that and be offended. Says Aisha was a companion. Okay, me personally, I don't have enough knowledge to make such a call. That's what he said, rahimahullah ta'ala. That doesn't belittle her status of companionship, and it doesn't mean that a Shafi'i is better than her to Allah. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, and said the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, إن أولى الناس بي المتقون من كانوا وحيث كانوا. إن أولى الناس بي المتقون. Surely the most deserving of people to me are the God-fearing. Men kanu wa haythu kanu. Whoever they may be, wherever they may be. Those pious ones, you don't know where they might be. You don't know who they might be. What did the Prophet say, alayhi salatu wassalam? How many slaves of Allah there are who have only two pieces of clothing, two cloths, something for the upper part, something for the lower part. And he's dusty and his hair is unkempt. Yani his hair is wild. And if he were to come to the people and ask them, they would push him away. They would turn him away. But if he were to raise his hands and ask Allah, Allah would give him what he asked for. That one, when you saw him, he gave you the willies and the heebie-jeebies. To Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, he was a great one. It was reported about Dhunnun al-Misri that he was in the wilderness with someone. Something occurred to him. He told the one who was with him, wait here. And then he went. That one who was with him stayed there for days, just drinking from the water, like the stream or the river or whatever was there, eating from the plants, waiting for Dhunnun al-Misri to come back. He said then after days he came back and he looked like a different person altogether. I said to him, what happened? Are you okay? Did an animal attack you or something? He said, spare me that human intimidation. No. I went into this mountain here, and I went into the cave, and I saw there a slave of Allah. He was so skinny, and his hair was white, and he looked ghastly as if he came out of his grave. And he was praying there in that cave. He just prayed and prayed and prayed, and I waited for him, and he prayed and prayed until after he prayed Asr, and then finally, and probably because you're not supposed to pray after Asr, he stopped praying, and then he sat and he put his back against a boulder and started making dhikr. And he didn't even speak to Dhunnun anyway, still. Etc. Not to go through that whole story. Point being that, look at that slave of Allah that Dhunnun al-Misri described. Rawahu ibn Hibban wa sahhaha. That hadith was narrated by Ibn Hibban, and he authenticated it because his book is called Sahih Ibn Hibban. It's one of the books of Sahih. ولا منافاة بين هذا الحديث وبين حديث خير القرون قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. And there is no contradiction between the hadith, the best of the people are my century, then those who come after them, then those who come after them. And this hadith about the most pious people, there's no contradiction between those two hadiths. Yani, the hadith of Ibn Hibban that the people who are most deserving of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam are the God-fearing. فَإِنَّ حَدِيثَ ابْنِ حِبَّانِ فِيهِ الْحُكْمُ عَلَى الْأَفْرَادِ. Because the hadith of Ibn Hibban judges the individuals. وَحَدِيثَ التِّرْمِذِي خَيْرُ الْقُرُونِ. In the hadith of At-Tirmidhi, the best of centuries, إِلَى آخِرِهِ الْحُكْمُ فِيهِ مِنْ حَيْثُ الْجُمْلَةِ. This hadith, the best of centuries, etc., until the end of the hadith, it judges in general. It gives the judgment of who's better in general. فَيُقَالُ بِاعْتِبَارِ الْإِجْمَالِ الصَّحَابَةُ خَيْرُ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ. And so it is said, by generality, and by considering the generality, the companions are the best of this nation. لأن فيهم من لا يلحقه بعلو مرتبته أحد ممن جاء بعدهم. Because amongst the companions is whom there shall not catch up to his level anyone who came after them. like Abu Bakr. No one would ever even be able to achieve his status, and Umar also. The Prophet ﷺ said, had the good deeds of the entire nation been weighed against the good deeds of Abu Bakr, then Abu Bakr's good deeds would outweigh theirs. So what chance do you have? You have no chance of catching up to someone like that. وَأَمَّا مِنْ حَيْثُ الْحُكْمُ عَلَى الْأَفْرَادِ, and as for judging the individuals, فَبَعْضُ أَفْرَادِ الصَّحَابَةِ أَقَلُّ دَرَجَةً مِمَّنْ جَاءَ بَعْدَهُمْ. Some of the individuals of the companions have a lower rank than those who came after them, meaning there could be a companion whose status is lower than a tabi'i. That's possible for someone who at least learned basic principles like this. What's the basic principle here? The basic principle here is what makes you better is your piety, your God-fearingness. That means you're doing the obligations and avoiding the haram. That's what makes you better. And then add to that, you're committing good deeds, performing rather, good deeds. That adds to your level. So if a person was a companion, but his piety and his good deeds were less, and his obligations were missing, and his sins were more, and then there came a tabi'i, like one of the companions was an alcoholic. He was a known alcoholic. They whipped him several times. Then you have a tabi'i who's a mujtahid, pious man. It used to be that when he would wear his izar, when he tightens the knot of his izar, it sinks into his flesh, sinks into his sides. But then he became, out of his fasting and his detachment from the dunya, so thin that now you can count his ribs. So just because he's not a companion doesn't mean that his status is less than someone who might be a companion. If that companion's deeds are not like the deeds of that one. MashaAllah. Allah Ta'ala is the one who grants status to someone. A man or a woman, a child, etc. Black, white, etc. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has slaves who would blaspheme at the slightest inconvenience. And Allah Ta'ala has slaves that if their hands and feet were cut off and they were thrown into a swarm of wasps, unable to even try to fight those wasps off, what would they do? They would praise Allah while they are being stung. فكيف يساوى بين صحابي قال الرسول فيه لما مات في الغزو معه وكان موكلا بثقل النبي خادما له. So how would there be equation or equivalence between a companion about whom the messenger said when he died in one of the invasions with the Prophet ﷺ, and he was in charge of the Prophet's luggage as the Prophet's servant? Huwa fi nar. The Prophet said about him, he shall be in hell. فَنَظَرُوا فَوَجَدُوا مَعَهُ شَمْلَةً سَرَقَهَا مِنَ الْغَنِيمَةِ. So they looked, and they found that he had a cloth. Shamla could be like a handkerchief or something like this, that he stole from the spoils of war. وَبَيْنَ عُمَرَ بْنِ عَبْدِ الْعَزِيزِ, and Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. How could such a one be compared to Umar ibn Abdul Aziz? That's a good example the Shaykh gave, because the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, he's in hell. Even the example I gave about the alcoholic, I don't know that he will be in hell or that he won't be forgiven. I was drawing attention to his deeds, his known deeds, without even saying his name. فهل يجوز أن يقال إن هذا أفضل من عمر بن عبد العزيز? So would it be valid that it be said that this one is better than Umar bin Abdul Aziz لأنه لم يرى الرسول, just because he never saw the messenger, he never met the messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. فما أشد فساد قول من قال. And so how corrupt is the saying of whoever said إن كل فرد من أفراد الصحابة خير ممن جاء بعدهم. Every individual companion is better than whoever came after him. So we deal with people like that who are Sunnis, who haven't learned well in this chapter. That's how they think. قال رحمه الله. The author, may Allah have mercy upon him.